Welcome to Racker's Family Support Services Reimbursement Funding Overview. Family Reimbursement Fund is a grant program that allows some families access to up to $3,000 a year in qualifying reimbursements. It is available to families living in Broome, Cortland, Chenango, Delaware, Otsego, Tioga, and Tompkins counties. In order to qualify, the individual must simply have eligibility through OPWDD, which is the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, and live at home with a non-paid parent or caregiver. There are no age restrictions to family support services. What can the funding be used for? Family Support Services, or FSS, funding can be used across two main categories: respite and goods and services. Let's dig into those. Respite funding is available to families to help pay for some of the cost of caregiving for their loved one with an OPWDD diagnosis. Respite is typically meant for those who are not eligible for waiver respite. OPWDD does require families to prioritize the use of waiver services first. However, in some cases, a family can access FSS respite if they can demonstrate that waiver is unable to serve them. For example, if they are waitlisted or denied based on a high medical need. Please note, exceptions to the waiver rule are rare, and a family should not count on reimbursement until granted an approval from OPWDD. Families not on the waiver do not need to apply for waiver, as they may be able to access FSS funding first. There have been some misunderstandings, so we want to reiterate that a family not on the waiver would not be encouraged to apply for the waiver, as that would actually reduce their chances of using FSS respite. If a family is eligible for FSS respite, they may be able to apply for pre-approval for respite funds to be used over the course of the calendar year. Some families opt to use all $3,000 in respite or set aside a portion for goods and services, which we'll talk more about next. Each family is different, and the amount can always be adjusted if something were to change throughout the year. However, once the money is spent, they cannot attempt to reallocate it to goods and services or a different agency. That $3,000 per person is to be split between all FSS programs and providers. That money will follow the person. It is important to note that this $3,000 is a reimbursement funding cap only and does not impact the other FSS services, such as behavior support, lending library, or parent network. Once a pre-approval is granted, the family can then submit a voucher as often as they would like and would be reimbursed until their approved funding or the program is exhausted. Reimbursement is never a guarantee. If a family fails to submit proper documentation for reimbursement or submits it outside of the reimbursement window, the calendar year, Racker will be unable to issue them a payment. A family will be reminded of the respite guidelines once approved. Providers must be at least 18 years old, live outside of this family's home, and must be paid between $14.20 and $20 an hour per OPWDD's guidance. If a family has remaining funds and the Racker's funding for that county runs out, they will be notified and can request unused funds from another provider agency. Remember that money follows the person. We notify families via a letter and give a list of other FSS servicers in their county. In this instance, Racker would no longer accept any applications for that county for the remainder of the year and would refer all new applicants to other agencies automatically. If the year comes to an end and the family has unused funds, they will not roll over into 2024, and rather the family must reapply in the new year. Besides respite, FSS can be used for goods and services. FSS funding is available to help pay for the cost of goods and services that relate directly to the person's OPWDD diagnosis. Each request is entirely unique, as each person is. Sadly, requests can no longer be based on economic hardship alone and must relate to the person's intellectual or developmental disability needs. Each request will need to be outlined on a new application and will need its own justification. More on that in an upcoming video. Some examples of goods we have had success in funding in the last year are yoga bows, bean bags, and crash pads, adaptive shoes and clothing, fidget items, and sensory lights. Some example of services we've had success in funding this year are camps, dance classes, music lessons, horseback riding, and equine therapy. In addition to our own success, OPWDD has released a list of allowable and non-allowable items for everyone to use as a guide. This list is subject to change, so to request the most current list, please email familyfunds@racker.org or visit the OPWDD website. Lastly, in addition to goods and services and respite, there is also the ability to access FSS for a one-time emergency need. Some goods and services are allowed to be reimbursed through FSS reimbursement only once per the lifetime of the person. These goods and services include rent, mortgage, utilities, food, pest control, home maintenance, and emergency respite. Due to these requests being highly specific to the situation, we ask that you contact the FSS team directly to inquire about specific justification and qualifiers if it's an emergency need that arises. For questions, applications, or to submit documents, please contact familyfunds@racker.org. Thank you.